Good evening and welcome to the regular meeting of the Kernersville Board of Aldermen. This is our first meeting of the new year, Wednesday, January 3rd, 2024, and we welcome each of you. I'll begin by calling the meeting to order. We'll now have an invocation by Pastor Carol Fulton with Children of Zion Outreach Ministry. Thank you, Pastor Fulton. Please join me now in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag. As we begin this evening, there was a suggestion by the town manager that we consider revising the agenda as we begin to move public hearings B and C to the first items on the agenda. So the order would be in public hearings item 1, we look at B and C first and then go to A. Do I have a motion to revise the agenda? Got a motion by Alderman Thompson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Gorham. All in favor, signify by raising your right hand. It's unanimous. All right, so I will call the public hearing on the Kernersville Development Plan B and the public hearing C. But I think that first or I'll call that item. But first, I think there's been a continuance requested, so I'll ask our Community Development Director, Ms. Catherine Garner, to enlighten us.
The applicant has requested a continuance until your February 6, 2023 meeting, as posted on the agenda.
Okay, do I have a motion to grant the continuance? Got a motion by Alderman Thompson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Gorham. All in favor? It's unanimous. And I want to thank Scott Mercer, Dave Wigmont, Sarah Sabinas, Lisa Voss, Sharon Barrier, Tom Leotard, David Hubeni, Clarence Barrier, and Geraldine Forrest, who've all signed up to speak. So come back February 6th, sign up again, okay, so that we know you're here that day. We'll have the hearing. It's a legislative process. You can contact us by email, letter, phone call, okay? We sometimes can't get back to everybody, but we read everything you send us. So appreciate your input in this. It may be that they change the plan some. It may be that there's changes we want to consider with the public hearing, the current submission, okay? And any updates will be posted to toknc.com, where you got the agenda tonight, the agendas, and you can click on that for the agenda and the supporting information for the February 6th meeting, okay? If we started the public hearing, then we wouldn't have all the information of their current plan right now. So just the vote would be continued, and then you wouldn't have a chance to comment in February. So that's why I'm sorry everybody came out to not have the public hearing, but that's the procedure moving forward. So I just wanted to let everyone know that we will be hearing at February 6th. Okay? So thank you for coming. You can stay for the rest of the meeting if you want to, but I don't want to have you can, we're streaming this. You can tune in and watch the rest from the comfort of your home, or you can stay. All right, next we'll go to item A. It's a public hearing on a rezoning. Michael Thielen, agent for Perry Road Properties. For properties located at 229 and 241 Perry Road, zoning docket K812. It is a public hearing. We do have our public hearing policy posted on the agenda. It's displayed currently on the screen. When an agenda item is denoted as a public hearing, persons attending shall be permitted to address the Board of Aldermen regarding the item under consideration. Those speaking in favor speaking first, and those against speaking second. Proponents and opponents shall each be given 20 minutes of time to speak and may choose to allow one speaker to utilize that time or choose to allocate the time amongst different speakers. The mayor divides the speaking time amongst the folks wishing to speak with the board. And if there's a presentation by proponents and opponents, then there's the opportunity for rebuttal, but it's all as listed on our agenda. So we'll start with the presentation by our staff. Ms. Garner. And before you begin, I do want to let everyone know, we did make a technical change over the holiday. Our IT staff has put at each desk here a screen. So we can see in more detail the maps and that sort of thing that's being presented, but we still display it on both walls, but we also have it right in front of us. More and more information has been conveyed that way with maps on the screens, and it's sometimes difficult to look at a speaker, look at the slide on the screens and get all the information quickly. So if you see us looking down, we may very well be looking at the same screen that you can see side to side there. So again, Ms. Garner, if you could proceed.
Good evening, Madam Mayor. Case 812 for Perry Road is a proposed zoning amendment from residential single-family RS20 and general industrial to general industrial. It includes 2 parcels, and then there's another request for one of those parcels for removal of the industrial corridor overlay district from the larger parcel to the north. It's PIN number 6877-62-1446. As a general rezoning, all the GI uses would apply. It's approximately 39.5 acres. Current zoning is RS20 and GI, and there's GI in the area as well as a couple other zonings. So there's RS20 and IP to the north. This is the old Kernersville Lake Park. So it's several parcels over. RS20 and GI special use to the east, GI to the south, and RS20, GI, and GIS to the west. With the general rezoning, as I said, all of the GI uses must be considered as part of the rezoning. So these are the approved uses in the GI district. With the thoroughfare plan, the Macy Grove Road and the Kernersville Loop Road are mapped to go through that larger parcel to the north, the PIN 6877-62-1446 parcel. The western terminus of the road will connect to the North Carolina Department of Transportation's Comprehensive Transportation Plan's Airport Connector Road. The eastern portion of the Macy Grove Road and Kernersville Loop Road from Perry Road and Dobson Street is currently the subject of a feasibility study with NCDOT. So this is the western terminus of the road that will be part of the Loop Road, but will connect to the Airport Connector Road. There's a lot of roads. And then that blue line, the blue dash line, is the Airport Connector Road. So it's projected to come from Macy Grove to Piney Grove, come down Linville Springs, have an intersection at Dobson, cross Dobson, heading west to where Perry Road extends. So I don't know if you can see that on your screen, but this is the portion from Dobson to Perry, and then this is Perry, and then Perry, there's a leg that will go to the west to the Airport Connector Road. In anticipation of that future road, the industrial corridor overlay district was adopted as a zoning overlay to the site. So Perry Road serves as a sort of dividing line between the highway corridor overlay, which goes from Perry Road to the east, and then the industrial corridor, which goes roughly from Perry Road to the west. The purpose statement of the overlay districts defines its intent as to serve as a tool for design in the context of developing Kernersville as a unique place within the triad while maintaining its sense of place. Consideration is given to balancing the interests of property owners with the betterment of the community's safety, welfare, well-being, and aesthetic character. The land use plan currently has the area designated for industrial, defined as established to provide areas for manufacturing, distribution, office, and business service provider uses, and provides locations for business and office parks. The industrial designation supports the GI zoning district request. So staff's analysis is that the proposed GI zoning designation cleans up a split zoning between GI and residential single family for the PIN number shown and is consistent with surrounding parcels in the land use plan. And staff's analysis is also that the industrial corridor overlay district should remain in place in anticipation of that loop road, portions of which are currently under construction and or study. This has been on the books for 20 plus years, the town of Kernersville, in anticipation of this future growth. It guides the aesthetics and site plan layout of the property. It does restrict some uses, but the request is, to my understanding, is because of the request to remove it is because of the unknown location of the road, though soon we will know where its terminus will start when the study is done, but also in honoring of that study for the aesthetic and site layout benefits that the overlay districts provide. Staff's recommendation was to approve the requested amendment to the zoning ordinance and rezone the property and retain the industrial corridor overlay. This was heard at December's planning board meeting, and planning board made a motion to approve the requested amendment to rezone the property from RS20 and GI to GI and remove the industrial corridor overlay on PIN 6877-62-1446. They found that the rezoning is consistent with the town's comprehensive plan and is further reasonable and in the public interest because the Kernersville Development Plan and Land Use Plan recommend industrial type development for these parcels. The slide is missing. Hang on with me. I unhid this earlier, but apparently it did not save. This was the vote. The case number is wrong, but this is the vote. So it carried with the majority of members present in December.
All right, this is a public hearing. I'll declare the public hearing open. I have Mr. Thielen signed up to speak for the petitioner.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, members of the board. Happy New Year. I'm here on behalf of Perry Road Properties, the applicant for the rezoning as to these two parcels. Perry Road is an agent for John Deere. We try to have some branding up there on the slides as well, but which you'll see. The branding was a lot more formal at the Deere level than I expected. So all you have is my Womble branding as well. But this is a John Deere. It's a John Deere agent, a John Deere application. I say this every time. I mean it every time. Kernersville has one of the best planning staffs in the state, so thank you to Catherine and to the rest of the team for all their hard work on this application. Can you take us to the next slide, please, Catherine? There was a neighborhood meeting. We held it originally. We held it back in October, I believe, October 4th, and there were no attendees. It was right here in town. It was during the week. Met all the town standards, but nobody showed up to the meeting for the rezoning, both to GI for both parcels and also to remove the overlay, as you heard Ms. Garner talk about, as to that northern parcel. To the next slide, please, Catherine. The current zoning, you heard Catherine's great presentation. We can skip through that, Catherine. You could probably skip through the next two slides, which are, again, just a redux of what Catherine has already reported superbly as to the application itself. You can see there the base zoning is consistent with the industrial designation from the land use plans. So the base zoning to general industrial is consistent with the land use plans categorization of these parcels as industrial, as you heard Catherine report. That's why there is no plan amendment before you tonight. The next slide, please, Catherine. I'll make this quick, but most of the presentation, or the balance of my presentation, I'm just going to explain our logic behind the request for the removal of the overlay district as to the northern parcel. You heard the staff recommendation was to leave the overlay in place as to the northern parcel. You heard the planning board voted in favor of the removal of the overlay, and we are here seeking to remove the overlay consistent with the planning board's recommendation from December. This is the ordinance provision that designates where the overlay is to hit, and you'll see there the highlighted portion in particular. I'm glad you have the slides in front of you because some of this font will be tight. But the loop road from the right-of-way of Old Hollow Road east of the proposed Pear Road connection. So the reason I'm putting this in here is this is essentially the textual designation, the textual basis for the location and reason for the overlay on the northern parcel. It's words, so it's everybody's trying to figure out what this means and where this goes, and the town planning staff has done a very good job of trying to then take that and apply it to the various maps as I'll walk through here to determine where the corridor is to sit. So to the next slide, please, Catherine. These are all the overlays, or most of the overlays in the town. And the reason I have this slide, this is a snip from the overlay map. And I'm going to step away here to point. These all follow existing roads. All of these are following that you see in front of you. All these blues and these reds and this yellow here are following existing roads. Except this here is not an existing road. And we're right here. This is Perry Road. Our parcel is right here. This does not follow an existing road, which is going to be relevant for what I'm going to talk about in about 2 seconds here. But that's an important fact to remember, that this is sort of a designation, an overlay based on where the road is probably going to be. And I think we all do think the road is going to locate, but no one really knows where it's going to be. So that's an overlay that is laid down on the map by virtue of where various maps, really DOT's designation, I believe, thinks the road is going to locate specifically. To the next slide, please, Catherine. This is now from the DOT's mapping. This is also clipped. This map was in the staff report as well. And you'll see here in particular, this is just a blow up of this section here. And this is Perry Road. And that's the loop road where the corridor is supposedly tracking. And our parcel is here. So we are going this way, Perry Road, to the west. To the next slide, please, Catherine. This is from the town's thoroughfare and street plan. Same thing, Perry Road. Here are the parcels we're talking about. It's these parcels we're trying to rezone. It looks like 3 parcels. This is actually not a parcel line, but it's a remnant from a rezoning application that was withdrawn. So it's actually this piece and then this piece. Those are the 2 parcels. And here's the loop road again, where the corridor is laying down, or supposedly laying down. To the next slide, please, Catherine. Now here's a comparison of the 3 maps that we just showed you. And as you'll see, this is from the DOT map, and there's our loop road. Here's Perry. That's the corridor. Here's the corridor from the town's thoroughfare and street plan. And this is from the town's online GIS overlay mapping, all just sort of compared. You can see that they are all kind of in the same area, but they're all sort of lopped on there, and lopped on there, and lopped on there. So it's not exactly precise as to where it locates. This is a big piece of property and the line is kind of there, and the line's kind of there, and the line's kind of there. There's nothing wrong with that, again, and this is a very impressive way that the town has come in and put the overlay and said, well, this is basically where it is. You see how close it is, but it's still, they're not precise, and that matters for the next slide. Can you go to the next slide, please, Catherine? And this is my last slide. This is why the overlay is a problem, and this is the only reason why Perry Road is here trying to get rid of the overlay as well as the planning board recommended. And the reason is that, and I know you have the monitors in front of you, that you can see that, and I've highlighted some of the text, fronting on any existing or proposed right-of-way, and visible from any public right-of-way, visible from corridor. If Perry Road goes in tomorrow, if you all were to grant the rezoning and the overlay stayed in place, so this was rezoned to GI as has been sought, but the overlay stayed in place, site planning both for the town staff and for the applicant themselves would be impossible in a certain way because no one can tell what structures, the structures that mean are going to locate when no one is exactly sure where the right-of-way is. It does say proposed right-of-way, but nothing has been proposed as yet. As you saw, those maps are kind of close, but they're not precise. They're all different, and in such a way that if site plan were to go through and the building were to locate, it's not just the applicant would have a hard time, the town staff would have a hard time determining if something was exactly fronting on the existing right-of-way, meaning on the corridor itself, if something was visible from the public right-of-way. And then here, in this third category for street yards, that's even more technical. It requires street yards of a certain width for lots with a certain depth. Well, we don't quite know, again, where the streets are and where they are going to actually locate because, back to that initial slide, those other corridors are following existing streets, existing corridors. Ours is not, in such a way that it's just going to be terribly confusing. So while it did make sense, and it does make sense for the town to have put the overlay on the property until that road is built in, it's essentially unworkable. And so that is the presentation, that's our reasoning for asking for the board here tonight to remove the overlay, not because it's bad planning, not because it gets in our way of development, but because it just gets in the way of any kind of development, more because it's confusing than because it stops what the applicant might want to do on the property itself. So with that, to the next slide, please, Catherine. So with that, we would ask you to rezone both parcels to a base zoning of GI and to remove the overlay, the industrial corridor overlay that applies to the northern parcel as recommended by the planning board. And we're here for any questions. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Thielen. Is there anyone else here to speak in favor of this? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition? Again, I'll call. Is there anyone who'd like to speak in opposition on this public hearing? Seeing none, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Does the board have any questions of staff?
I do, Madam Mayor. And this may be more for Mr. Thielen than it is for staff, but clearly you're not going to, the applicant is not going to want to withhold development of the parcel in question until DOT makes its decision on the exact location. What happens if you develop it and if as a result of DOT's selection, there would be additional or different requirements? I'm not sure that's a very well articulated question. But.
No, I think I understand your question, Alderman. If the DOT road, if the site is constructed and the overlay remains in place, which is part of the problem, and that road then were to come in a way that no one had anticipated, then it could, which is part of the problem, it could render, and I think it probably would render, part of the development to be a nonconformity from a zoning standpoint. Whereas if we remove, which I don't think anybody intends, and that's what we're trying to avoid. And by removing the overlay only from this parcel, then that it allows those regulations that are specifically tethered to a right-of-way that does not exist and no one knows exactly where it is. It untethers us from those obligations and untethers the staff from having to determine what those obligations might be. And then if that road comes in the future, which I think everyone does expect at some point in time, there would be no nonconformity issue at that point with respect to the overlay district itself, which is why it's a back-end reason as to why we do want that overlay taken away, Alderman. Does that answer the question?
Absolutely. That's where I was headed with the
Thank you.
question. Thank you.
Sure.
I understand about you wanting to, why you want to remove the overlay. For those reasons, it looked like it was mainly the aesthetic of the way the building looked and the way it would be set back and all of that. What are there other things that are being removed with removing that in terms of things that could be done with that property by taking the overlay off of it?
I would posit no. Those three that I selected, Alderman Barrow, are because those are specifically tethering themselves from a design standpoint to the location of the corridor. There are a couple other design regulations in that same overlay section, but I don't, and Catherine, I don't want to speak out of turn. You're going to know your code better, so certainly than I, but I don't know what other regulations beyond those three. There's maybe one or two other design regulations that are applicable.
The overlay districts all govern building materials and building design. The industrial corridor governs, unlike others, it governs facades that are visible and facades that are not visible from the corridor. That part was left out, but it's pretty much the materials, the design, visible or non-visible, landscaping, site plan and parking layout, and then also it would remove some prohibition of uses. There are some uses that are prohibited, that are allowed in GI, but are prohibited by the overlays.
That's the question I'm asking.
Yes.
I mean, like, could you put a trash transfer station in there? You know, that's what everybody hates, you know. Oh, God, they're going to put a transfer station. What is that? You know, you explain it to them, everybody has a fit. That's my question.
So uses that are permitted in GI but prohibited by the industrial corridor would be an adult establishment, a motor vehicle storage yard, off-premise signs, correctional institution, dirt storage, landfill construction and demolition, landfill, land clearing, and inert debris, asphalt and concrete plant, borrow site, mining, quarry, or extractive industry, storage and salvage yard, and transmission tower. So those are the uses that are permitted in GI and are prohibited by the industrial corridor.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Thielen.
You're welcome.
Could you explain a little bit more about the facades that are visible and the facades that are not visible and how this overlay district applies?
I don't have my UDO in front of me, but I can pull it up if you want to see the exact language online. But the industrial corridor has standards for facades that are visible and then relaxed standards for facades that are not visible. It mostly has to do with I think the facades that are visible from the corridor require some brick, and facades that are not visible from the corridor would not require brick. So we have talked about, as part of the preparation of this case, like, okay, well, if this were to be done, then what? Or if this alternative were proposed, then what? So we've talked through some options in terms of the visible and the non-visible application of the overlay and how that might affect their site layout.
If I may add, part of the discussion, since we're going down this road, is these, to your question, Alderman Barra, about the uses as well, none of the prohibitions in the overlay district, or none of the regulations, I should say, including the use prohibitions in the overlay district, are a problem for the property owner's intentions with regard to the property. And that's why I spent the whole time on the presentation simply on these sort of undefined. It has nothing to do, this is not a pretextual concern, in other words. But it was an in-depth discussion with staff, as Catherine just noted, to determine if this is something that we could live with, and then ultimately it was determined that, well, this might just be a headache down the road, and God forbid if something were to happen to either us or to staff along the way, and then memories shorten, and then it was a problem with regard to the specific tethering of the structures to the specific locations that are simply unknown. It's a known unknown, we'll put it that way. And but those standards in the regulations themselves are not the cause of the concern in and of themselves. It's just with regard to the tethering to the design.
Thank you, Mr. Thielen.
Thank you.
So with this being a general use rezoning, like if this were a special use rezoning, then Alderman Barrow's concern could be addressed by eliminating certain uses. But since this is a general use rezoning, we have to consider all possible uses of the property with this owner and into the future, whether the ownership stays with this owner for the next 200 years or whether the ownership changes to other owners. Whatever we decide today would run with the land and govern the uses of the land in the future. Even if the property is built on after we know exactly where the road will be. Right?
That's correct. So if the overlay is removed and it's just general industrial, then if John Deere sells the property, my example is always if they win the lottery and they move to the Caribbean and sell all their property, then anybody can do whatever they want according to zoning ordinance. So that is true, that it runs with the land.
So is there a way to address the concern that in the future, if everyone's expectation is the corridor would be in roughly a certain place, and somehow that changes because of DOT requirements or whatever, that they wouldn't be in this kind of conundrum that Mr. Thielen's been talking about, that all of a sudden everyone expected the road to be in a certain place and it was built in compliance with that overlay, but then all of a sudden it's non-conforming because nobody anticipated the road would be built in a slightly different place.
I think that is the purpose of nonconformities in the UDO, to protect the property owner who built their property according to the code and then something changed. And I hear that they don't want to be nonconforming, and I respect that too. So those are both valid points. I don't know of another way to restrict the uses in a general rezoning without retaining the overlay district.
Okay, so the petitioner could have asked for a non-conforming use and put some of the ideas of the overlay district in it, but not necessarily the specifics of the fronting the road and that sort of thing.
They could have requested a conditional district, or conditional rezoning with a site plan and tailored some of their, ask for exceptions through the conditional process, but you become a nonconformity. You don't generally request to be one. You become a nonconformity because you've built your property and then DOT puts a road somewhere else, and then suddenly you don't match the code anymore. That's generally how properties become nonconforming.
All
So
right, so would they get like cited for that?
No, it's just noted in the file that it's non-conforming, and then there's a special section of our ordinance that protects those property owners who have non-conforming properties about how they can expand and further develop their property, and the respect that, and it respects their property rights if they become non-conforming after they're constructed.
All right, does the board have any more questions of staff or any questions of petitioner?
I'd make a motion, Madam Mayor, to approve this K812 rezone from RS20 to general industry and remove the overlay district.
Okay, I have a motion.
I second that, Madam Mayor.
Motion by Alderman Barrow, second by Alderman Apple. All in favor? It's unanimous. Okay, anything further on this? All right, thank you. Okay, we're next to our public session. 2A is speakers from the floor. Is there anyone who'd like to speak to address the board on an item that is not included on the agenda? Okay, item B is presentation of the financial audit for year ending June 30th.
Madam Mayor, we have Brandon Flincham here from Forbes to give you the update on the current year's, our fiscal year's audit for 22-23.
Madam Mayor and Board, as Curtis mentioned, I'm Brandon Flincham with Forbes. I'm one of our managing directors, and I was the lead on the audit this year. So just hit the highlights, primarily focus on the general funds, financial performance, and then leave time for questions at the end. But as your goal would be, the town received an unmodified or a clean audit opinion, so that's good. The financial statements that's been presented to you and also submitted to the state, we actually got some notification back from the state today. They had some minor tweaks that they want us to make, but no issues. So we'll get those turned around and resubmitted to them, and it'll get approved, no problem. Also, the town received the certificate of achievement for excellence in financial reporting for the Government Finance Officers Association again this year. That was for the 2022 ACFR. They presented or will present the 2023 ACFR for that same award and anticipate receiving it as well. So as a whole, the town's financial reporting is in good shape. From a financial standpoint, again, focused on the general fund, your overall revenues in the general fund increased roughly $2.6 million over 2022. That's a 7% increase. The largest changes there would be in your property taxes. That's up roughly 6.5%, or mostly related to additional property valuation with some development. And then your sales and use tax is up about $1 million. Again, the economy was doing well during FY23, so additional spending drives sales tax dollars back to the town. And then lastly would be investment earnings. They're up about $570,000 compared to 2022. And that's really just changes in interest rates as y'all all felt in your personal portfolios, or inflation is definitely driven investment earnings up. So overall, that's the biggest drivers in your revenues in the general fund. From an expenditure standpoint, they're up about $14.3 million over 2022, which is about 43%. The largest driver is capital outlay. You had some large capital outlay expenditures in your parks and rec, and then there's more in streets. I think you had some street resurfacing that occurred during the year. So those were the primary drivers in your expenditures being up. As a whole, of that 14.3 million, it was 11.5 of that was capital outlay related. As a whole, your fund balance for the general fund decreased roughly $2.8 million. So at the end of FY23, you had $19.9 million of fund balance for the general fund. Of that, $7.7 million is unassigned. So roughly 16% of it's unassigned. The state requirement's 8%, so you're well above that. And as you move forward, like I said, you had a lot of, I'm gonna call them one-time expenditures in your capital outlay in your general fund in FY23. That percentage should increase where your fund balance is a higher percentage of your annual expenditures. Quick summary of your debt: you have $425,000 left in refunding bonds, so those will be repaid in full in FY24, and $800,000 left in the Clean Water State Revolving Loan Fund. Those will be repaid in full in FY25. At the end of FY23, Your installment purchases or your notes payable totaled about $38.5 million. The primary driver, that was a significant increase, but the primary driver was your had about $16.5 million of debt issued for the Ivy Redmond complex, and then about $4.5 million for the Beeson's Fire Station. The installment purchases, they'll get paid off through 2042. So you got a little ways to go to get them paid off, but they will get paid off by that time. So, some changes this year to your financial statements. A large undertaking that the town had was GASB 96. Last year, y'all got to hear one of my counterparts talk about GASB 87, which related to leases. GASB 96 related to subscription-based IT arrangements or information technology arrangements. In the past, those were reported as expenditures. In the current year, you had to put an asset on your balance sheet and a liability. Didn't really impact the financials a lot in numbers, but it did take a significant amount of time for the town to comply with the new standard. Let's see. I will say that the town, with the, we had a lot of turnover within the finance department. Some key people left, and not only did they leave, it was right around the end of the year. So that resulted in some delays in the audit report, as well as the implementation of GASB 96. That took quite a bit of time. So the town's finance team they put in a lot of effort, is the way I would say it. I mean, they're always great to work with, nice people, willing to take on any advice that we would give them and improve processes. But significant undertaking with the turnover they had. So with that, there were some accounts that were not reconciled as we were going through the audit process in that time frame. So we had to report what we referred to as material weakness, just because of the dollar amount of some of the journal entries we had. But between that and the GASB 96 implementation, the financials got submitted on December the 12th, which the LGC still considers to be late, which is a financial performance indicator. And like last year, the town they'll write a letter to the LGC. But again, you had a lot of turnover, and that material weakness really relates to the reconciliation of those accounts. The town is working already. They got steps in place. You look a year down the road, they'll have a year of experience. We've been working with them on some of the questions they had, because you lost a significant amount of institutional knowledge with Samuel and Cynthia and others leaving. So at the end of the day, we do have two financial performance indicators, one being the timing and the material weakness. But we performed a single audit this year in addition to that. So we audited three major programs, one being the Office of State Management Budget Funds, also the ARPA funds. This year we had to perform a single audit of that. We only did an examination last year because of some of your funding levels. We had to perform that. And also we performed another single audit over highway planning and construction dollars. And none of those separate standalone audits had any compliance findings. So as a whole, that's my report. If you've got questions, I'm happy to entertain them, but would like to thank the town's staff for, they put in a whole lot of hours getting this audit wrapped up, and a lot of hard work that they should be commended for.
Are there any questions? Thank you, Mr. Flincham. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Franz, for all your hard work and your staff. All right, anything further on that, Mr. Swisher? All right, if not, we'll move on to item C, consideration of an ordinance amending traffic schedule 4 of chapter 9 of the Code of Ordinances to add a portion of Bluff School Road to the list of streets titled No Parking Anytime. This came up at a prior meeting, so this is a follow-up to that concern.
Yeah, Catherine, if you can pull that up. We have a memo and a map. We'll go to the map. I'll explain the memo. You have the memo in your packet, and as the mayor mentioned, this came up a couple of months ago. The board asked for some more information. We've looked at it, and we're recommending no parking, not on the entirety of Bluff School Road, but basically the section you see there in red. It's about an 1,100-foot section. It goes from Copperfield Court, I believe, to Post Oak Road. And that's a narrow road. We measured that road, it's 20 to 21 foot wide, no sidewalks, no curb and gutter. Looked at some roads in some other neighborhoods in this area. I think the road in the Alderman Barrow and Alderman Apples neighborhood is about 30 foot wide, somewhere in there, 30 to 32. This one's 20 to 21, and as you can see, the reason we're recommending that section, if you're going, I guess it would be kind of, if you're coming from the south and traveling north toward Hopkins Road, you've got a curve there that you come out of right before you get to Post Oak Road. And if you're going from Hopkins Road down Bluff School Road, you've got a curve just past Copperfield Court. So it's what that does if you have cars parked on one side or both sides of the road. It's kind of a blind curve there as you come out of that curve. Car there, you know, you may or may not see it. You may or may not have time to move. Also, in this particular section, this is where where we see the most parking on the road. We looked, all of these houses that front Bluff School Road, all of these houses have a pretty long, deep driveway, so they really should not need much on-street parking. There's a couple of houses that front Bluff School Road that have a road right beside of them. There's one that fronts Bluff School Road that has a driveway off of Post Oak Road. There's another one that fronts Bluff School Road that has a driveway off of Fielding Drive. So those folks could park, on that side road, not be as much traffic. So we're recommending no parking on that section only. If the board so desires and approves it, we would signage it to that way, and the ordinance is written that way as well.
Okay, are there any questions?
Is that no parking on one side only? Isn't that what you said?
It would be no parking on both sides.
Both sides.
Yes, sir.
Now this road, Bluff School Road, once they put that bridge in over 40, that Hopkins Road will dump straight into that, won't it? Aren't you gonna put a stoplight up there?
I think it'll be a stoplight there it'll kind of come to like a full intersection as opposed to going off. I think the plan is to redesign that intersection so you don't have that break off to the left. It'll, like you said, I think it just dumps straight into Bluff School there. But you'll still have the curve right past Copperfield Court because it'll straighten it out more at the Hopkins Road intersection.
Thank you.
All right, do I have a motion to adopt the ordinance?
So moved, Madam Mayor.
Got a motion by Alderman Gorham, second by Alderman Apple. All in favor? All opposed? Mr. Barrow in opposition. All right, item D is consideration of a resolution authorizing the acceptance of grant funds through the North Carolina GREAT program from Guilford County's American Rescue Plan Act funds for rural fire departments.
Madam Mayor and Board, you have a memo in your packet that explains the grant. It is a grant from, as the Mayor said, from Guilford County's ARPA funds. It's in the amount of $39,140. And it's what FirstNet does is it allows fire departments to access the dedicated Band 14 infrastructure. And so that would be in Guilford County. I don't think it carries over to Forsyth County, does it, Chief, or does it? Okay, so it would be applicable in both counties. There's no matching funds required from the town. So it's a $39,140 grant. If the board chooses to accept this, you have the resolution authorizing that acceptance.
Do I have a motion to accept the grant?
So
Make that motion, Madam Mayor.
Okay, I've got a motion by Alderman Gorham and a second by Alderman Barrow. All in favor? It's unanimous. Okay, we've got consideration of ordinance for budget amendment number 4 for fiscal year 23-24. Mr. Swisher?
Madam Mayor and Board, you have that budget amendment in front of you. I'm going to explain a few of the expenditures that you see in there. The first one, the police department in the amount of $203,924. About $64,000 of that is to replace the shooting simulator exercise that we have. The simulator kind of gave up, no longer works, and we use that simulator. They use it on a daily basis just about in the police department. It's a great training tool. So we have that in to replace that. The $139,000 difference is for 36 body cameras. So what it is it's not committing you to purchase those, but Axion will give us a discount if we sign the intent to purchase now. If something happens and it does not get funded in the budget next year for 24-25, then there's no obligation to it. We just don't have to purchase them. But for us to sign the contract and the intent to purchase, the money has to be in that line item. That's $139,000 that you see. It's a savings of about $70,000 over 5 years if we sign that intent to purchase now. So our intention is to purchase those 36. I think we purchased 32 in the current year's budget. So the next 36 would finish out the full amount. You also have in there the repair for the Lindsay Street Recycling Center, $53,939. We received a check from the insurance company today to cover, excuse me, $48,000 of that. So most of that was paid by insurance. You also have a couple, we're recovering some unspent funds, grant funds from last year. And then the last one, the General Services Department, we have $32,000 in there for asbestos abatement in the bottom of the old library. I spoke to you all about that. If this is approved, that will begin tomorrow. You probably saw all of the parking lot blocked off as you pulled up. So if this gets approved, the money's approved, we'll start that tomorrow. It will take about 3 or 4 weeks for that to be done. You also have in here the North Carolina Great Grant that was just approved. And in the revenues, we have some revenues to offset that. As I mentioned earlier, we have the insurance to offset the Lindsay Street Recycling Center. And we have our we have our grants and contributions to offset some of it as well. Overall, we're decreasing the amount of fund balance appropriated by $528,000. Be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Are there any questions? Do I have a motion to approve the budget amendment number 4? Got a motion by Alderman Thompson,
Second.
second by Alderman Gorham. All in favor? It's unanimous. Okay, item F. Consideration of a resolution approving a lease with Forsyth County. Mr. Swisher. Did I miss something?
Yes, ma'am. No,
Hesitating.
you're
Okay.
correct. I got ahead one, but
Okay.
item F is a lease with Forsyth County. It's for the recycling center. You have in your packet a copy of that lease. This one runs out. It's a year-to-year lease, but this current lease will expire June 30th. I'm sorry. We've reworked the money basically from what they've paid that they didn't get to use the recycling center. As you all are aware, it was closed for quite a while. So we put that toward the amount of lease that will be due for the remainder of this current fiscal year, 23-24. So if the board approves it, they will owe about $3,800 for the remainder of fiscal year 23-24. If they choose to extend the lease, they've got 2 one-year renewable terms beginning July 1st. The lease will be $18,000 a year. That is an increase over the previous lease amount that was $12,000 a year. We asked for a little more, got a little less, but you know, it's one of those things. I think the recycling center is a good facility to have for the county folks and also the folks in Kernersville that use it. So it will be $18,000 a year. They have not said yet whether they will carry it beyond June 30th of 2024. They have that option if they choose to, but they have said, you know, they've already approved this lease. This is the lease that they approved. They've indicated they will carry it at least through June 30th of 2024. I don't know beyond that, but we're fine with the conditions of the lease. If the board approves it, we will send it to them signed and move forward from there.
Do I have a motion for approval of the lease? Got a motion by Alderman Thompson.
Second.
Got a second by Alderman Gorham. All in favor? It's unanimous.
Madam Mayor, I have a question.
Sure.
Is the recycling center now fully operational and fully repaired?
It is, yes, sir, and it went back operational probably about 3 weeks ago or so. We went ahead and the county wanted to go ahead and get it back operating. We were fine with that, even though we didn't have a lease. It was one of those things that benefited the citizens, and we were fine with it. So they are back operational and have been, I think, for about 3 weeks.
Were our delays presented because of the insurance claim, or because I had some folks call and say, hey, I use that, but it's not, when's it going to be back online?
It was a little bit of both. We had to get the insurance claim worked through. Then we had to get the contractor where they had time to go in and do it. So it was a little bit of both. It didn't look like the damage was that much until you got in and realized there were some structural issues with it as well. So once they went in and found that, then they had to get the structural engineer back out and all of that. Then we had to resubmit the claim to the insurance, work through that. So there were various issues along the way that held it up. It, quite frankly, took probably longer than it should have, but fortunately they did get through with it, and they actually got done with it a little sooner than they told us they would once they started working on it.
Thank you.
All right, anything else on this item? Okay. Then we will move on to the next item, which is item G, consideration of a resolution authorizing a sole source exemption to competitive bidding requirements for an interactive training simulator for the police department.
This is for the simulator that was just approved in the budget amendment. If we don't put it out to bid and we say it's a sole source vendor, there have to be certain findings for that. You have those findings in this resolution that we're asking you to approve. We're wanting to go with Vertra Incorporated. Their product is it the same one we've had? Was that Vertra? It's just similar to the one that we had. Yeah. So it's similar. We'll work with what we currently have in place. They can get it to us without any delay. So we're asking the board to adopt this resolution authorizing the exception to competitive bidding for that.
Do I have a motion to adopt the resolution, or do I have questions? Got a motion by Alderman Penix, second by Alderman Barrow. All in favor? It's unanimous. Item H, consideration of a resolution authorizing an application with the LGC regarding a financing contract for the purchase of improvements. Mr. Swisher?
You have in your packet the resolution as well as the items that we will be asking the LGC to give approval for. These items are currently in the fiscal year 23-24 budget. They all require approval by the LGC before we can move forward with their purchase. Estimated amount of the items, $2.29 million. Maximum loan amount will be $2.5 million. So if the board approves this resolution authorizing the financing of these, we will send it to the LGC for their March meeting.
And these are things that were in the last budget,
They're in the current budget, fiscal
yeah,
year
that's what I-
23. Yes, ma'am.
23, 24. The last, the
Correct.
budget we adopted back this summer.
Yes, ma'am.
Do I have a motion to adopt this? Go ahead. Hang on, Mr. Daffman. Mr. Barrow, could you turn your microphone on?
You got it on.
I just wasn't talking to it.
Okay.
The Kernersville Museum structural renovations down there for $340,000. That's work that they're gonna do on the Morris House. Is that correct?
That is work that we're checking into the Morris House. As you know, the board approved, I think,
Right.
$22,000 to do the demolition inside the house. Once we get done and we find out what the cost to do that is, if it's more effective or better to do the Morris House, then that money will go to the Morris House. Yes, sir. We will bring it back to this board, whichever property it's used for, and then the board will, at that time, can say, if it's the Bellamy House, say, no, I don't want to spend it on the Bellamy House. If it's the Morris House, you can say, no, I don't want to spend it on the Morris House. We don't know at this time exactly which one it will be. Our anticipation is it will probably be the Morris House, though.
Okay, thank you.
And I think too that, that the town will not borrow funds above what is budgeted and approved. It could be, that's the maximum. It could be further restricted by it not costing as much as it was anticipated to cost in the budget.
Correct. We can't go over what you see here without coming back to this board. Yep.
But you're not wanting to like remove that because, you know, then we couldn't move forward if we wanted to. Even though we may choose something that costs less than the $340,000.
Correct. If the
Because you're wanting to
340,
package it with everything else.
correct, because it is an improvement to existing real property and has to go to the LGC. So if we remove it and then decide later on we want to do it, we have to go back through the whole process. And every time you send an application to the LGC, they charge you per application. So that's why we kind of pile it all together. Just getting approval from the LGC certainly does not mean we have to do it. That's a good thing. If the LGC approves it, it's there, it has approval. And then if for some reason, you know, we go through the process, we get bids and it's $700,000 and we say we're not going to do it, then we just don't do it. But if we decide to do it and it's not in the packet, then we got to go back through the whole process.
That's a good question. Any further questions? Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Got a motion by Alderman Thompson,
Second.
second by Alderman Gorham. All in favor? It's unanimous. All right, that brings us to item I, consideration of a contract with Ed Powell for services as town attorney.
Mayor and board, you approved at the last meeting to retain Mr. Powell as town attorney. You have in your packet his contract that sets out in 7 or 8, actually in kind of 10 different sections, his contract, what he will be responsible for as town attorney, what the board expects of him, and then what the town will be compensating Mr. Powell for his salary, as well as different conferences and so forth. Contract pretty much mirrors last year and the year before in regards to all of those different requirements. The only thing I think that changed in it is the salary.
Do I have a motion to approve the employment agreement?
I'd make a motion to approve the contract as written.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Barrow, second by Mayor Pro Tem Thompson. All in favor? It's unanimous.
Madam Mayor, may I make one comment?
Yes.
I hope that the folks in town understand how valuable Ed's advice and counsel is to us. His availability, his responsiveness, his judgment, his experience, and his contacts far exceed what he's charging us to give us access to those. He's always available. I don't think I've ever asked him a question where he said, you know, I really don't know about that. Let me check on it. He always knows about it because he's so much in touch and has his finger on the pulse of what's going on with the town. So, Ed, we appreciate what you do and how you do it. Thank you for that.
Thank you, and thank the board. I really appreciate your confidence in me, and I'll try to live up to your expectations.
Thank you. All right, item J is consideration of acceptance of requirements and restrictions for grants for improvements at Civitan Park.
Madam Mayor and Board, as you all are aware, we just completed several months ago the renovation of Civitan Park over on Nelson Street. Part of the money for that came from the Land and Water Conservation Fund, and as a requirement of that fund and that grant, we are required to place a property restriction designating the property as being developed utilizing the LWCF funds. And as such, you can't use the property for anything other than a park. Not that we ever intended to. It already had that designation on a portion of it anyway, so now we're putting it on the remainder of that. So you have the lien notice that will be filed with the county, and we're asking the board to approve the attached notice of land and water conservation grant requirements and restrictions on that property.
Okay, do I have a motion?
Motion approved.
Motion by Mayor Pro Tem Thompson, second by Alderman Gorham. All in favor? It's unanimous. Mr. Swisher, on this next item, if there's anything else we need to do on Civitan Park, are you good?
No, ma'am.
Okay, on this next item, item K, for a number of years, we've had the community video program videos on the front page of the website, and it is time for them to be updated. Is it your recommendation to continue with working with them?
Yes, ma'am. You have the proposal in your packet, and a little bit of background on what the mayor spoke of. They do these videos for free. For the town, they contact area businesses and asking them if they would like to sponsor the video in whatever capacity. We get none of the funding from that. It all goes to CGI. They send in folks to produce the videos, put on the website. We don't really have to do a whole lot. We prepare some of the shots that we'd like for them to use in the video. The mayor gives a welcome at the beginning of the video. It's worked well. I think this is probably this will be the fourth time, I think, or the third time we renewed it. So it's for 3 years at a time, I believe. So we've been with them about 10 or 12 years now. And, you know, they get a lot of hits off the video. We get people that see the video, email with different questions and whatnot. So it's been successful for us. And I think the businesses that advertise on there also get some hits on their websites as well. They put a link on the video if it's about industrial development or whatever. They'll contact different commercial building companies and so forth, put their logo along with a link to their website on that particular video. So I think we have 4 different areas maybe that they cover, 4 or 5.
6.
Is it 6? Okay. So I was 1 short, but yeah, they cover like parks, schools, industrial, residential, things like that. So, and it is, I'm pretty sure it's still on the front page of our website.
It is. If you go to toknc.com and you scroll down to videos, there's welcome, quality of life, real estate and relocation, education, parks and recreation, and business and industry. And I, worked with them before doing the welcome twice. And I watched the videos, and I've gone to their website to look at what they're currently offering of this company. I think it's a reasonable option for the town to continue to work with them. They were easy to work with, and they do a high quality product, but in looking at their website, I think they would really welcome the opportunity for a little more collaboration and input from us as to the content of the videos. The one that was really striking to me is the one that covers nonprofits in our community, and didn't really dig very deep into the nonprofits that are in our community. And part of it is it's been some passage of time. I think they probably would have updated these, but it would have fallen right when the pandemic shut everything down. So I think that I'd like to work with the company and maybe even appoint an ad hoc committee to like help work on the content. Or I could work with them and see if that's needed, maybe pull in some staff, some of our department heads and some of you all in your areas of interest to help work on the script or the concepts that they cover. A lot of times the town manager and staff take care of working with our vendors, but I think that this really needs a little bit of updating. We've got a lot of great images now that the town's taken from some of our groundbreakings and new construction and that sort of thing that could be incorporated into this. And a lot of the links to the businesses seem to be also a good way for people to learn about the community if they're new to the area or considering moving here. The way people get information has drastically changed over the past 10 years. And certainly in the 2 iterations of working with this company, so people are getting more information online. So having those links to the businesses will be of value to some people. So I think that it could be a really good product, maybe a better photo, introducing the videos than the one we currently have on the website. So I could kind of see where this goes and appoint a committee if need be, or just pull different people into the project as needed.
Mayor, do we have a link to the chamber in that video? It seems to me that that'd be a reasonable thing to include.
Yeah, and Chris Comer is one person that I would talk to.
Good,
Yeah.
good. Okay, thank you.
I don't think there currently is one. Actually, there may have been. Not to take your time looking, but if you click on them, there's the main one. Has a lot of different links, including Novant Health is one. Some of the smaller, not a small business certainly, but smaller than Novant Health, which is enormous in size. Carmine's and Preferred Lawn and Garden. Forsyth Tech has a link, Clark's Barbecue or some. But if you're interested, after the meeting, you can look at the various videos and think about what you would want someone from Kernersville. Well, sorry, I'm starting one. I was looking to see if, I don't remember whether or not the Chamber of Commerce had one. I think they did. But it's certainly something they could have an agreement with the CGI digital company to have. Olympic. There's a Berkshire Hathaway link, but I think it links to a specific agent with Berkshire. But I would encourage all of you to look at the videos and tell me what you think ought to be featured or ought to be included. Because some of it is very standard and some of it's very specific to the community. But I don't object to us continuing the relationship. I just feel like we ought to really work with them a little more intensively this time. So should we make a motion to adopt the agreement and then a consensus of the board in support of me working with them on it?
Yeah, I think that'll be fine.
Okay.
I'd so move, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Got a motion to adopt the agreement
Second.
by Mr. Apple, second by Mayor Pro Tem Thompson. All in favor? It's unanimous. And y'all are okay with proceeding in this fashion? Okay. Looks like everyone agrees. So Curtis, when you get in touch with them, figure out who they want us to work with as to content, and you and I can consult with them as to content.
I'll copy you on my email reply back to her
Okay.
and just have her contact you.
Okay. All right, super. All right, we are then to the consent agenda. All of these matters are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion with no separate discussion unless a board member or citizen so request, in which event the matter will be removed from the consent agenda and considered under the following item. A, approval of minutes for the November 8th special session. B, approval of minutes for the November 14th regular meeting. C, approval of placeholder minutes for the November 16th special session. And we don't go into detail about things on the consent agenda, but since it's a placeholder, just let me say that was a tour of the Parks and Rec building under construction. Item D, approval of, and there was no business conducted, that's why it's a placeholder. It just said there was a meeting called that day and no business was conducted. Approval of minutes for the November 29 regular meeting, approval of minutes for the December 5th organizational meeting. Would anybody like to remove any of these items from the consent agenda? In the audience, on the board? Seeing none, do I have a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Penix, second by Mayor Pro Tem Thompson. All in favor? It's unanimous. Okay, Town Manager's report. Mr. Swisher?
I don't have anything, Madam Mayor.
Okay, Mr. Powell?
I'd like to thank the board and Mayor, Madam Mayor, for your strong support, and I look forward to beginning my 4th year with the town right away.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're glad to have you. Hopefully 2024 won't be as challenging, but if it is, you're ready. All right, matters to be presented by the Mayor, Board of Aldermen. I'll start with you, Mr. Penix. Okay, thank you. Mr. Gorham?
Nothing.
Mr. Apple? Mr. Barrow?
That this is the year we're gonna get the pool going. So I'll be recruiting people to be on the committee to go figure out what it's gonna cost, what it's gonna look like, all that. But that's it. That's all I got right now. Thank you.
Mr. Thompson?
I have nothing, thank you.
I would like to share one thing that I observed over the holiday season. The fantastic and wonderful reception that the citizens of the town of Kernersville had to the Christmas decorations and the light displays. Everything from the small Christmas trees at the various park facilities that volunteers had decorated, to the cascade of stars on the wall at Founders Park, and the wonderful display of Moravian stars in the tree in the farmer's market, the stars scattered in some of the trees at Town Hall, and topping it all off, the stupendous Christmas tree we had, 38 feet tall with the star, 42 feet tall. I had a lot of family in town, and we drove around on Christmas Eve to take a look at the lights, and we saw so many people making a special stop to Town Hall on Christmas Eve to go see the tree and to take family pictures at it. And it was just so wonderful. Some really small children just wandering up to this tree, running up to the tree in kind of wonderment. It was just, it seemed like people really enjoyed it, and it gave them a place to go, in celebration of the holidays with their families. And it was just really special, and I had never seen that happen to that extent with the previous trees we've had. So it's just a really special addition to the town of Kernersville. So I wanted to thank everybody for your support of that, and a special shout out to our staff who arranged that tree so beautifully that it just captured the imaginations and the hearts of everyone. So I got called by the Kernersville News today about what to look forward to for 2024. So I think we had a great 2023. We did some, as confirmed by our auditor's report, we did a lot of big one-time things in 2023, and a lot of great projects are underway. But I think 2024 will be a fantastic year, and honored to begin our first meeting of the year and serve with all of you again for another term. So appreciate all of you. And like Mr. Barrow said, reaching out to the community and all these different issues to see what we can do to make this the best year ever for the town of Kernersville. And clearly our staff furthers that goal, and we appreciate you, Curtis, you, Mr. Powell, and our entire staff, department heads, and everybody. I think a lot of my neighbors are really also appreciating public services this month with all the special collections. So thank you in advance, Dora, and to your staff that gets out there in the cold and collects all these electronics and bulk items and the routine trash and in advance for the snow and ice and hazardous weather services that they're likely to soon provide. So just as we start this year 2024, I just want to thank everybody. Is there anything further in open session this evening? Do we have a closed session? If not, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Got a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Thompson, second by Alderman Barrow. All in favor? This meeting is now adjourned.